In my late teens, I went to Noumea to compete in a tennis tournament. I stayed with a family who kindly put me up in their basement level bedroom. It was very dark when the lights are off, being below ground, and it was cluttered, as it also served as a storage room. For a wannabe tennis player, it was the perfect accommodation. But for me, the room was a nightmare. I felt completely overwhelmed, knowing what I had to do in order to get myself to bed each night. I knew I had issues, or major issues at the time, but I didn't have a name for it, but later discovered it was OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, a very debilitating disorder. I would spend 3 hours every night obsessively tidying the contents of the room just so that I could get myself to bed for the night. Each object had its place. My least favourite, paper. I would spend 20 minutes with one sheet of paper, fastidiously ensuring it was aligned to the edges of the desk or the most adjacent fixture. Once positioned, I would touch it 3 times. Of course, never happy how I first touched it or the pressure in which I touched it. I would have a cleansing touch, always to the right. Try and do that without moving it. Then I would touch it in factors of 3. 3, 3 squared, 3 cubed, always with cleansing touches to reset, until I reached 27. To get to 27 took 41 touches. That's if I didn't move the bloody thing. I would do this to everything in my vicinity to bring closure to the day. And then I'd go to the light switch. It was a good 7 metres away from my bed. I would turn the light switch off, I'd touch it 41 times, whilst trying to remember the zigzag path necessary to get from the light switch to the bed without knocking something. Otherwise, I would have to start the process all over again. Not only did I have to remember the path, I of course had to take 3 steps to the bed. Obstacle course, triple jump in the dark. This comical and equally depressing experience in Noumea, I guess, was the start or the ride that I had to go through to get over this. I come from a wonderful family. I had good friends. I was young, healthy, had enough talent to be what I wanted to be. So how was it that I got myself to this point? Well, here's my theory. I was a teenager, very focused on outcomes. I was trying to make it on the world stage. Boris Becker had won Wimbledon at an age 2 years younger than mine at the time, and here I was still floundering around at the bottom rung of professional tennis. I was full of fear, doubt, made internal excuses and justifications as to why I wasn't performing, all to protect my ego. Bottom line, I wasn't having a crack. I wasn't laying it on the line, and I wasn't willing to be totally vulnerable. For someone who feared being out of control, I think OCD for me was about trying to control outcomes. Every routine or obsession was an attempt to try and reduce my anxiety. No matter how hard I tried to be perfect, the anxiety still resided. The underlying cause was that I was trying or placing my self-worth on outcomes. A bloody horrible place to be. Not to trivialise how hard it was to overcome or beat OCD, but I used every ounce of my will when I got back home to go cold turkey. I set a date when I would quit, and thankfully I haven't been symptomatic since. But I'm thankful for going through the experience because it continually serves as a barometer in my life. Being on the perfectionistic spectrum does have its advantages. I'm willing to work hard, I'm willing to do things properly, but I have to remind myself all the time what's going to give me the most traction. And sometimes that requires slowing down. Something I hadn't yet learned at 20, and something that I continually remind myself of even today. I worked very hard to just be comfortable with who I was, and tried to implement a process that would increase the probability of success, putting my health and happiness front and centre. I also found my why. You see, I love to compete. I love all the emotions that come with competing. It is the process of having a crack and emptying your tank that is so much fun. Doing all that you can do and learning from each event, milestone, or defining moment to become a more resilient, more informed version of your current self. So, by stopping the BS, the excuses, the justifications, and just simply relishing in the joys of competition, I went from a ranking of 0 to the top 100 in the world on the ATP Tour in 9 months. Nothing had changed other than me accepting the source of my anxiety and embracing a change in mindset and process. This included me learning the difference between high percentage and playing it safe. Because of my history of going for the most ridiculous shots under pressure, all due to not knowing how to cope in those moments, people often try to teach me how to play it safe. So I associated playing it safe with high percentage, but I learned that high percentage can involve maximum risk. A common example of this terminology in tennis is when a player is cramping and they can no longer run. So they go for broke because they can't afford for the ball to come back. Now this tactic is something they would not normally adopt, but in the circumstances, it's the only option, and it's the highest percentage option. During that meteoric rise, I fell in love. I met this incredibly beautiful girl from the Gold Coast named Kel. She was full of life, had an amazingly infectious personality, and I was head over heels. I discovered soon after meeting her that she had cystic fibrosis, a disease that has a life expectancy of 28 attached to it. For a bloke in his 20s, it was a lot to grasp. But whilst there was fear and apprehension about the future, I knew how I felt, and I remember thinking, I'd rather spend any amount of time with someone that made me feel this way than walking away out of fearing the future, a future that was completely unknown. It was a no-brainer. So I had a crack, and we were married within a couple of years. Tragically, after 18 months of marriage, Kel passed away. I was stuck for 2 years, continually trying to find my identity, a purpose to move forward, and I just struggled to find that reason for being. No matter how much I wanted Kel to be back, I kept in this rut and perpetual cycle that no matter what I did, I kept arriving back to the same problem, that Kel was gone. Kel was the epitome of having a crack, and here I was at a standstill, not having a crack. Understandable? Sure. But I felt like I was disrespecting the very thing that she stood for. So it was time for me to pick myself up and make the most of every day. I've been very low twice in my life. The first during my battles with OCD, and the second when I lost my first wife, Kel. But would I do it all over again? Absolutely. It's because I treasure what I gained, not what I lost. Now, I'm not here to say that's easy, because it isn't. It can be bloody hard. But all I try to do is bring those experiences with me and use them as sources of inspiration rather than a shackle. The fear of being stuck for me is far greater than having a crack and not succeeding. Having a crack is success. Life after Kel has been one hell of a ride. I found great love again. I met an extraordinary girl that I loved the moment I first laid eyes on her. Her name is Jess, and we've been together 15 years, been married 11, got 3 wonderful children, and we're still very much in love. Even though Jess has no life-threatening illness, the fear of losing was there, but the fear of living without love is far more frightening. So it was easy to dive in again. My sport went from strength to strength also. I worked my way back into the top 100 in the world and played some incredible matches. One of my favourites was against Roger Federer. I had 7 match points and lost. Now you might be wondering, how is this possible? This is one of my favourite matches. I mean, I lost the match and it is the quintessential heartbreaker. But the thing is that I did everything that I wanted to do on each of those match points. But I just lost to one of the greats of the game that came up trumps each and every time. It's too good, and there is genuine peace in knowing that you've given it your all, irrespective of the outcome. Towards the end of my tennis career, I worked my tail off to enjoy professional status in 2 sports, golf and tennis. And I even got to do the two of them on the same day. Now, some people ask me, how is it that I was able to cross over and do something unique as that? I think it's because I was willing to pursue something unconditionally, something that I was passionate about, and there was no half measures. Now, this enabled me to use the data that sport utilises on a daily basis. It is the way that we can learn from everything we do and move forward, and that is one of the greatest reasons of all time. Even though I won a professional golf event 2 years after turning professional, I never realised my dream of playing on the US tour. Now, I could view this as a loss, but even though I didn't reach my target, I know in my heart of hearts again that I gave it my all, and there is completely and utterly peace in knowing that you have done that. After competing in 2 sports for 17 years, the sting or shame of not giving your all is what takes the longest to recover from. Failure is inevitable and necessary. Over that 17-year period, I have only won twice at the highest level, at the professional level. That means that pretty much every week I have gone home a loser. Even the great Roger Federer has lost 240 times. It is the multitude of losses, whether it's in life or in sport, that is essential to success. For me, failure is not giving it your all. Success is emptying your tank, going to bed and putting your head on the pillow every night knowing that you gave it your all. In sport, we analyse both defeat and triumph. But in life, we're usually not as willing to delve into those tough emotions or experiences. Life moves at such a fast pace that we tend to gloss over or park those negative experiences in the deepest recesses of our mind. We then tend to lock the door. I've locked the door on something very difficult in my life, but I didn't realise it at the time. The last 10 days of Kelly's life was on life support, and her body continued to shut down. The doctors came to us and asked for permission to turn off the machines which were keeping her alive. Myself, Kel's mum and dad, decided to go and say our goodbyes before they turned off the machines because we felt Kel would want us to remember her as this young, vivacious young woman with the world at her feet. Because I signed up for a 2-year leadership, innovation and strategy program through the Melbourne Business School, I was put through this inner coach, inner critic exercise that just dredged up this crushing wave of guilt some 15 years ago. My inner critic was brutal, yelling, "How could you have made such a dumb and selfish decision? I mean, when I go, I absolutely want to be holding my loved one's hands. How could I have been so selfish?" After a flood of emotion, tears, and time to allow my inner critic to voice what needed to be said, my inner coach was able to reconcile that sometimes it is impossible to make the right decisions in the worst of circumstances, and sometimes we just don't want to face those painful realities that can be too much to bear. I said my deepest sorries to Kel in my own good time, but most importantly, I forgave myself for the decisions that were made. Now, I don't know what impact this has had on me over that 15-year period, but I know that it was a very cathartic experience and one that I needed. After that program, I decided to have another crack at a career transition. My why, other than loving to compete, is about shaping destinies, because I feel like I have so much more to give, especially when it comes to bringing high-performance methodologies and strategy to business. To give myself the best chance, I went back to university full-time, and I've just finished an MBA in Leadership and Innovation. Now, I'm currently unemployed, which is a first in my life, but I am going to trust in this process that it will pay dividends in the long run. No matter where this road leads, I know I am having a crack, and I will accept whatever comes my way. Because there is genuine peace in knowing that you are giving it your all, especially when it's aligned to something you're passionate about and in a manner that reflects what you hold dear. However, there are times, there's been many occasions where my love of a challenge and impatience to get better has been counterproductive. So I must sometimes find the time to slow down, stop, take stock in order to speed up. Whatever you're facing in your life, whatever obstacles you're challenged by right now, empty your tank. But sometimes slow down in order to speed up. But most importantly, trust yourself. Have a crack. The rewards are always worth the risk. Thank you.